Liverpool make their move, but Newcastle United reject their opening offer worth over £110 million for Alexander Isak. The Premier League champions are gearing up to go again as Newcastle brace themselves for a second bid. Yeah, welcome along to the transfer show. The Isak story is fast becoming a saga. Mark McAdam and Michael Bridge are with me to bring you the very latest. Plus, we'll be joined in the studio by former Hull City Executive Chair Paul Duffin. Manchester United want a number 9, but are they also looking for a number 1? The latest on their interest in Gianluigi Donnarumma. Welcome along, but there is only one place to start. It is fast becoming the saga of the summer. His name, of course, is Alexander Isak. Mark McAdam, who is just getting his mic ready there, primed and ready.
That's the worst start to a show I've ever had in my life.
I did try and delay. I did try and delay. Did you notice?
Yeah, I did notice that. Yeah. Sorry. It's my fault.
Look, big day of developments.
Start again.
Big day of developments with Alexander Isak. Where do we stand right now?
Newcastle fans, Liverpool fans, and breathe. It's been one of those days, and it feels like it's been one of those days every day for the last couple of weeks or so. More developments today, and significant developments as well. Not just interest, not informal offers, not communication between the two clubs. There has been an offer rejected by Newcastle from Liverpool for the striker Alexander Isak. It was worth, we understand, 110 million plus add-ons. So it was a significant starting point for any possible negotiation between the two clubs for a player that is very highly rated. Newcastle value him at £150 million. But where do we go from now? And it feels like with everything that's happened over the course of this summer, the noises that are being made from both sides of the fence, that this is something that will rumble on and on and on. At the minute, Eddie Howe is with his squad in Asia for their pre-season tour, whereas Alexander Isak, who didn't travel to Asia with the squad, is in Spain training at Real Sociedad, one of his former clubs, with his own team. And you know, you have to look at this situation and think this automatically feels like a saga. You look at it and you think this is all a little bit bizarre. Things aren't quite the way you'd expect them to be. I think the key situation here is that this potential deal would be a Premier League record, which gives you an indication that these things don't happen overnight. Huge sums of money at play here. But one thing that's really important to point out is that if, for example, Liverpool were to bid, just say 200 million for Isak, and Newcastle said, OK, yeah, we accept that, doesn't mean the deal gets done, because any potential deal will be subject to Newcastle United getting in what they feel is a top-class, Champions League-ready, world-class striker. That is the caveat to any potential deal should Liverpool pay what Newcastle are looking for. So there's a long way to go.
Is there not a danger then that if they don't accept it, regardless of whether they've got a replacement or not, of course they want to bring in someone if Isak goes, that they might not get this money again?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, they could be looking at this financially, saying this is the kind of money we're never going to get again. However, Alexander Isak could stay at Newcastle, he could sign a new contract, he could stay, and then he's still got 3 years left as things stand. He could be there this time next year, he could have scored another 30 plus goals in the season, and his value will still be in excess of 100 million because he's been brilliant. And that's another scenario. And I think this is the most difficult thing. There is not one single person, whether it be Arne Slot, Eddie Howe, Dharmesh Sheth, Michael Bridge and Mark McAdam, that could sit here and say, this is how this is going to unfold, because no one, even the big players at the table, do not know in which direction this is going to go. But the key thing is Newcastle and Eddie Howe will want to go into the season knowing that they have got a more than capable squad of challenging top four Premier League, get to the latter stages of the Champions League, win another piece of silverware, and that means good quality players going in, and that's where the challenge lies. But they are in the market to sign more players.
Yeah, and they are, and they were in for Benjamin Sesko. Of course, they're still in for Benjamin Sesko from RB Leipzig. Manchester United are pursuing him as well. Over the week, the noises we're getting there is that Sesko might prefer a move to Old Trafford over St James's Park, but again, it's going to depend on the financials. Brentford forward Johan Wissa, he's another one. That one, you talk about Isak becoming a saga. This one is getting a bit unsavoury, isn't it? He has no intention of playing for Brentford again, is what we're being told, and he is desperate to join Newcastle United. Look, I was watching the 5 o'clock transfer show with you two guys. Mark McAdam was making a really good point there about Newcastle fans saying that this was going to be the summer where they've just got their first piece of silverware in years. They're in the Champions League. They're going to go big in the transfer market. So, Michael, how frustrating is it for Newcastle United, for their fans, richest club in the world, and yet they can't actually physically go out and spend the money that they'd want to?
Yeah, I mean, look, we know about these PSR constraints. I think the thing is in Newcastle from the takeover onwards is that they've jumped in the fast lane and it's been good. And recruitment-wise, they've got it pretty much bang on every time. Let's start with Kieran Trippier. He brought a bit of leadership to that squad and he's been a captain there for some time. Bruno Guimaraes, one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. OK, Sandro Tonali had a ban which we know about. Top quality midfielder. I think their midfield's probably one of the best in the Premier League. They've spent very well, Anthony Gordon. But now they've hit this brick wall. Now, what interests me as well, we talk about replacing Isak. I think in an ideal world, Eddie Howe would like Isak and someone, because we have got the new European format, the Champions League, the Europa League. These are relentless, non-stop games. And you saw clubs come up short last season because the fixtures were too much. That, I'm sure Eddie Howe wants to build on it with Isak, not without him. So it's a saga indeed. But you mentioned players there. We mentioned Ollie Watkins at 5 o'clock about being a potential replacement. I'd imagine that would be in a saga in itself, because Aston Villa are ultra ambitious for next season as well.
Yeah, do you know something? I feel really sorry for Newcastle in so many ways, because this is absolutely not the way they would have planned this window to unfold. They were sort of set back straight away with the departure of Paul Mitchell. So the people at the top of the club doing all of the deals at the moment are picking up things literally last minute. Now, most sporting directors, Dharmesh, and you'd be able to quantify this, will have a plan in place probably in February and March with how we want to attack the summer. This
even earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we want to do. By the end of May, we're going to do this. We're going to go and get these 2 or 3 targets in nice and early. We're going to go and make sure this has happened. We're going to sell this person, sell that person. And all of that work is done for weeks and months in advance. But at the end of May, middle of June, they were left without a sporting director. So they've got Eddie Howe, who's taken on the reins to try and help out as best he can. You've got Steve Nixon, who's been at the club a long time, and you've got Andy Howe. Andy Howe has been responsible for some of the best business that Newcastle United have done, but he doesn't have a lot of experience at the top end of negotiating deals. Although he's negotiated deals himself, he's sold players himself, he's scouted players himself and targeted them, he's trying to pick up the pieces of what's been going on. And I know a lot of players that they've targeted over the course of this summer, they've missed out on. Is that because they're going for the wrong players? No. They're competing with the top-end teams to try and get the very best players. Is it their fault that they've gone and joined Real Madrid or Liverpool or Chelsea, or they've gone elsewhere for more money? No. Liverpool can offer bigger money. Manchester United can offer more money. So Newcastle have to just go, this is what we can afford, this is where we can go, this is what we need to do. So therefore they can only work to the budget that they've got in the position and the pecking order of the Premier League table and the financial table. So they're actually trying to do the best they can and just coming up against dead walls all the time. And that's where I feel frustrated for them. The structure is good there. They just need a little bit of luck.
Do you think there's a possibility? There's 2 transfers I remember. Luka Modric Spurs to Chelsea. Spurs said, you're never going there, right? Wasn't happy, but he stayed another year, joined Real Madrid. Harry Kane, Man City, not happening this summer, didn't happen, went to Bayern Munich. Do you envisage maybe Isak potentially staying one more season, then going a year later, Newcastle sort themselves out in terms of replacements? Or you think it's gone beyond that now?
Well, ultimately, Eddie Howe's stance will be, I want Alexander Isak to stay. And I believe you can be a huge part of this team moving forward this season. There has been a lot that's happened over the last 2 weeks. Alexander Isak is in Spain. The fans know what's going on. The fans know that he's asked to explore any potential opportunities to depart Newcastle United this summer. So there has got to be a lot of bridges built between him, the fan base, the management, his teammates, and he, to perform at his very best, has to be happy and comfortable in himself in this situation. So whilst at the minute he's a Newcastle United player, they're back from Asia on Monday, he's got to get his head on playing for Eddie Howe and training well and being ready on Monday to be a part of that squad, regardless of what happens with any potential offer from Liverpool if a second one was to come.
Mark, a lot can change in a transfer window. We on this transfer show 3 weeks ago were talking about Newcastle United bidding for Hugo Ekitike. And the Newcastle fan base were getting very excited. It was dream scenario number one. Hugo Ekitike and Alexander Isak playing up front for Newcastle. Then when Liverpool came in, it was the second best scenario, whereby Alexander Isak will stay because we know Hugo Ekitike has gone to Liverpool. The worst case scenario they were talking about was Hugo Ekitike doesn't come and Alexander Isak still leaves. There is that possibility that can still happen, but by the same token, a lot can change in the remainder of this transfer window, can't it? If they can press play potentially on one of their prime targets, then the face of the transfer window changes again, doesn't it?
One transfer, one phone call, one moment can completely transform the whole summer. The optics right now for Newcastle fans is this has been the worst summer in the history. And 3 months ago, it was the best season ever. And that's how quickly things can change. We know that they're interested, as you said, upon Benjamin Sesko. It's another player that is of interest. Difficult deal to get done, an expensive deal to get done. We know that they're interested in Yoane Wissa. One or two things just slotting into place, and suddenly the whole situation can look completely different. And that's why working in transfers can be so difficult, because we could sit here with information right now, we can walk off there at 8 o'clock and the whole story's completely changed. And you have to be almost you have to almost pre-plan, or what's the word? You have to guess what's going to happen next, because preempting it, that's it. Thank you very much to the producer in my ear, because you never quite know what's going to happen and what direction it's going to take. And this is what makes it so frustrating for fans, because you think we're getting Hugo Ekitike, brilliant, and suddenly you've lost out on him. You think Alexander Isak's going to stay, and suddenly there's still more interest. And therefore, it makes it really difficult for us to predict what's going to happen, because you feel like you're always chasing shadows and you're always one step behind.
So on the one side, Newcastle United, it feels like, as you said, potentially a really nightmare scenario for them. It's not the same from a Liverpool perspective, is it? This is turning into one of the most extraordinary windows from a club that we've ever seen. They've already spent close to £300 million. If, it's a big if, Isak was to come, it will take the spending past Chelsea's record outlay back in 2023, which was around £435 million. That's if Newcastle United get the £150 million that they would want if Isak was to go. So from Liverpool's perspective, it's looking pretty rosy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But it's a confirmation that this is now Arne Slot's team, because at the end of last season, you had Liverpool have won the league. It was with Jurgen Klopp's squad, which I always found a bit unfair, because no one predicted Liverpool to win the league last season. I didn't see many. But then all of a sudden, the pressure will be on because of what they've spent. But it looks like they've spent it ever so well. You just wonder, I don't see Liverpool walking away from this, do you? I don't see Liverpool walking away because of one bid being rejected. That would surprise me. I know there have been reports out there, but that would surprise me. But looking at them now, that's looking more and more like Arne Slot's team. I'm sure many are excited to see. I mean, I know you know Milos Kerkez very well. That's someone who would, you know, walk into that side of a battle with Andy Robertson potentially. Florian Wirtz, everyone's excited to see that. That's a huge transfer fee. But that confirms that this is Arne Slot's team now, doesn't it, when this season kicks off?
What it shows to me is that there has been really structured, targeted, clear business. Liverpool knew exactly what they wanted to do at the start of this window, and they've gone out and got it done, so that Arne Slot walks in virtually on the first day of pre-season and he knows the squad he's got to work with. There'd be probably a striker and a centre-back to go into that squad, and that would be their business done. And there still could be some quite heavy departures. A lot of talk about Harvey Elliott, a lot of talk about Darwin Núñez as well, so there could be more. We mentioned earlier on Sky Sports News Tyler Morton as well. Big conversations happening between Liverpool and Lyon over the course of this weekend. That would be 15 million, another 15 million, 100% PSR profitable, so therefore more money in the bank with regards to their finances and their accounts. So this is a team that have been really organised and structured. They have executed this window so far to perfection. They still have so much headroom with regards to PSR, so they are sat in a very comfortable position, and they've built a team that arguably could be the team to beat for the next 2, 3, 4 or 5 Premier League campaigns.
Fantastic stuff. Just before we go to a break, a quick transfer line to bring you, and it concerns the Nottingham Forest goalkeeper, Matt Turner. He has moved on a permanent transfer to the French club Lyon. The fee, we believe, is around £6.5 million. Remember, he was on loan at Crystal Palace last season, former Arsenal keeper as well. So Matt Turner has made a permanent move from Nottingham Forest to Lyon. Up next, Tottenham close in on a midfielder. The latest on Manchester United's interest in Gianluigi Donnarumma. And we've been talking about Newcastle United. There's more Sunderland spending.
And it's a player Thomas Frank wanted very early on, so that would be a good move for Spurs.
Yeah, and just one other line to bring you from Spurs, and it's news of a departure, just a temporary departure though, and that is the highly rated Mikey Moore. He's joined Rangers on a season-long loan, still a massive part of Spurs' future, you would think, because there's no option to buy in this one. He actually turns 18 in around 10 days' time, I think, and he's expected to sign a new Spurs contract. So Mikey Moore going to be spending the season at Rangers. Let's go from Tottenham Hotspur, Mark, to Manchester United. They need to sell players, clearly, and they've made that very, very clear, but they want a number 9 as well. Who are they looking at?
Yeah, a couple of names on the list right at the top of it. Benjamin Sesko, a player that is wanted by Newcastle United as well. Manchester United very much in the market for him. It's funny, a couple of years ago he was on the radar of Real Madrid. He stayed within the Red Bull group, going from Salzburg to Leipzig. He's been watched by Premier League clubs since he was a teenager, really, and it feels like now this is the summer where he is available and potentially available for Premier League sides. It's an expensive deal to make happen, but we know that Manchester United are interested in the 22-year-old. They're also interested in Ollie Watkins as well, but that deal potentially could be quite difficult because of Aston Villa's stance and reluctance to sell a key member of their first team. So yeah, they are in the market for a number 9. I should imagine they'll get one, but what it looks like at this stage, we're not quite sure. But those are 2 players that are definitely very much on their radar.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because this one has been driven by their recruitment director, Christopher Vivell, who was actually the Red Bull scout at Red Bull Salzburg, and he brought him Šeško in as a 16-year-old. Just a couple of other lines with regard to Manchester United and the latest on Jadon Sancho. Borussia Dortmund remain interested in signing him. He, of course, joined United from Dortmund back in 2021, went on loan back to Dortmund for the second half of the 2023-24 season. Performed pretty well as well, didn't he? Got him to the Champions League final. Sky Germany are also reporting that he may be prepared to take a wage cut, because that was a bit of an issue when Chelsea decided not to take up the obligation to buy him at the end of last season. Now, might be some other players who could be on their way in at United as well, Michael.
Yeah, this is one we were given yesterday. Now, we must stress this is just interest now. Gianluigi Donnarumma from PSG, the PSG Champions League winning goalkeeper. Now, why is there interest? Well, he's in the final year of his contract at PSG, and they're signing a new goalkeeper, Lille's Lucas Chevrolet. So, but we are told there's a possibility he might stay and challenge for that spot as well. But look, looking at what United have had over the last couple of seasons, if that was to happen, that would be a huge, huge signing for Ruben Amorim, wouldn't it? Donnarumma.
Well, it's the type of player that Manchester United fans want to be associated with. Champions League winner, someone that's coming for a big club. This rebuild over the course of this summer with the Ruben Amorim fingerprint of DNA on that team, and you get the feeling that a player like that, along with Cunha and Mbeumo, and then someone like Šeško, that would be the type of summer that Manchester United fans would say, this is where we feel like we're back to being what we are. Now we need to start seeing it on the pitch. But in the window, they're certainly making all the right noises.
OK, let's rattle through a number of the other clubs. We've been covering Arsenal's interest in a certain Eberechi Eze from Crystal Palace all this week. Where do we stand on that one now, Mark?
Yeah, still no formal club-to-club contact at this stage, but we know that Eberechi Eze has a release clause, which we understand to be 60 million plus 8 million in add-ons. However, it's just a case of who wants to trigger that and pay that in its current terms. Now, the terms will probably be quite strict with regards to the payment structure and the way that the buying club has to do this. So it'd be interesting to keep an eye on. We know that Mikel Arteta is keen on the player, likes Eze. He's just had a fantastic campaign. He's been one of those players who's been sensational since he's coming from Queen's Park Rangers. Is this the summer where he gets that big money move? One to keep an eye on. Yeah, conflicting reports on this release clause, actually, because a few reports suggesting his release clause actually expires today. OK. Well, there's other reports saying that there is an expiration date, but it's not necessarily today. And I think sometimes clubs like to negotiate on a release clause anyway. They sometimes might want to pay a bit more than the release clause in return for more favourable payment terms. So I think it's definitely one to keep an eye on, Eberechi Eze, as we get towards the end of this transfer window. As much as Crystal Palace will not want to see him go, there is definitely an interest there from Arsenal. Michael, we were talking about Newcastle United earlier on and the struggles they're having in the window. It's probably been exacerbated by the fact that their big, bitter rivals in Sunderland, who've just come up from the Championship, are spending big.
Yeah, I'm still getting the shivers from the words release clauses from another transfer from a few weeks ago. But yes, Sunderland fans, you're excited, and with every reason, because you're going for it. And you've signed Robin Roos on a 5-year deal, Dutch international goalkeeper, £9 million plus 2.5 million in add-ons. Would you like to hear from him now? Of course you do.
It feels really good. For me, it's really a dream come true to play in the Premier League, to be at such a big club with such a big history. So I'm really happy.
For the fans that may not know too much about you, how would you describe yourself as a goalkeeper? Because as we know, it's quite a maverick position. What would you say to that?
I would say I like to play aggressive, so come off my line, come with crosses. I like to play with the ball, and I think I'm trying to be calm always, so hopefully they will see this.
Yes, Sunderland, one of the three promoted clubs alongside Leeds United and Burnley, who are doing business as well. But quick question, I'm going to put you guys on the spot here. The last 2 seasons, the three promoted clubs have gone straight back down. Do you think that all three promoted clubs will go straight back down again this season?
No. 2 words. Granit Xhaka.
So you think Sunderland stay up?
Yes.
All right.
Go on.
No, I agree. You literally took the words out of my mouth. I wouldn't have done it with the same style and panache that you did. But
Different.
No, I like Sunderland. I watched them quite a number of times last season in the Championship. I was at Wembley when they got promoted. And I think when you've got youthful energy and pace out wide and a no-fear attitude, and then someone in that dressing room with over 200 Premier League appearances that can just knit it all together, I think they've got the best chance. And I think the 3 teams that have come up have got a lot more about them, a lot more quality than perhaps teams of previous years. It will still be a mammoth task to stay up, and the statistics show that. But I think if anyone can do it, it will be Sunderland.
Well, we've got that on record now, so let's see if you're right. We'll play it back.
And Burnley and Leeds. Like your boat.
No one's going down.
No one.
Just one other line to bring you, and it's an interesting one actually, because it concerns Sol Sidibe, formerly of Stoke now, because he has completed a move to PSV Eindhoven, signed a 4-year deal. These are pictures into us at Sky Sports News of that signing, brokered by his representatives at Premier Sports Talent. He had entered the final 2 years of his contract, had the 18-year-old. Lille were interested, a number of Premier League clubs were interested as well. England under-18 internationals came through the Stoke youth setup, having made his first team debut aged just 16. But what a move for him, going to the Dutch giants, PSV Eindhoven. Well, up next, transfer news from every single Premier League club. Plus, we're joined in the studio by former Hull City Executive Chair Paul Duffin. Stay with us.
Hello, welcome back to the Transfer Show. Time now to go around the clubs for your bite-sized Premier League roundup, starting with Michael's favourite club, Arsenal.
Yeah, there have been no talks between Arsenal and Crystal Palace over Eze. Eze, Arsenal have an interest in the forward, but he has 2 years left on his contract.
Aston Villa's stance is that Ollie Watkins is not for sale despite interest from Manchester United. However, they are keen on United winger Alejandro Garnacho.
Now, Bournemouth expect to be busy in the final month of the transfer window as they look to replace defenders Dean Huijsen and Milos Kerkez. Ilya Zabiani is also of interest to PSG.
Now, Brentford remain interested and committed in keeping Johan Wissa at the club. The 28-year-old returned to the training ground yesterday, but is unhappy with the club's stance.
Of Brighton, 19-year-old defender Sean Keogh has joined Brighton from Irish side Dundalk. He'll join up with the under-21 squad.
Burnley are looking for a goalkeeper to replace James Trafford, who rejoined Manchester City earlier this week. Martin Dubravka and Stefan Ortega are players they admire.
Go to Chelsea now. Mamadou Sarr has rejoined Strasbourg on a season-long loan. He returns to Ligue 1 7 weeks after signing for Chelsea from Strasbourg.
Crystal Palace have still had no official offers for Eberechi Eze. Oliver Glasner believes his squad is too light in numbers and wants new faces in and fast.
Everton about a £27 million offer for Southampton midfielder Tyler Dibling rejected. The club are looking at steps and their next steps.
Fulham continue to look for wingers this summer with Reece Nelson of Arsenal and Nottingham Forest's Adama Traore under consideration.
Leeds United have made inquiries for Leicester City for attacking midfielder Villa El Alakanusi. He has 3 years left on his deal, and any bid would have to be upwards of £25 million.
Liverpool have had their first offer for Alexander Isak rejected. The offer was worth £110 million plus add-ons.
Man City returned to training today after their unsuccessful Club World Cup campaign. A new face in their squad was their latest signing, James Trafford, will battle it out to become the new number one.
Manchester United have an interest in PSG goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma, but as of yet, there's been no club-to-club contact.
Well, Newcastle are still assessing their options and looking to sign a new striker and a centre-back after the addition of Aaron Ramsdale.
Matt Turner has completed a permanent move from Nottingham Forest to Lyon. The fee is around £6.5 million.
Big spending. Sunderland have signed Dutch goalkeeper Robin Ruijs on a 5-year deal.
Tottenham are expected to complete the loan signing of João Palhinha from Bayern Munich this weekend. The deal has a buy option of around 22 million plus add-ons.
West Ham look like they'll be beaten to the signature of Liverpool midfielder Tyler Morton. Liverpool are in talks with Lyon for the midfielder.
Alkmaar left-back David Moller-Wolf is travelling to England to undergo a medical ahead of his £12.1 million move to Wolves. And that completes the Premier League roundup.
Back to our top story on the transfer show. Newcastle United expecting a second bid from Liverpool for Alexander Isak after rejecting their initial offer, £110 million. And to do that, we are joined by the former Hull City Executive Chair, Paul Duff. And Paul, thank you so much for coming along and for your time. Let's start with Alexander Isak then. Is there a feeling of inevitability from your experience that this deal is a case of when and not if, especially when the players effectively made it clear, I want out?
Yeah, I mean, it's all a bit of a gameplay, really. To a certain extent, it's poker being played between the players' representatives, I'm sure, and the club. But the club, at the end of the day, there's no point in them trying to force him to do anything. There have been many situations in the past like this where clubs and players have gone toe-to-toe, hasn't gone anywhere, they've managed to roll back any animosity and continue for another season. But I would expect this is going to go for a good couple of weeks yet, with increased bids coming in, more rumours, more unrest, a bit more disruption. But I think right now it's more than likely it will get done eventually.
Paul, can you give us an insight into what that boardroom will be like at Newcastle United? Because clearly this is the worst scenario for them, selling their best player, and he's made it very clear. What will the Newcastle owners, board members be doing, and how do you think they should approach this situation?
I think they'll be quite pragmatic. I'm sure they're in a world of focusing on things they can control and not anticipating things that they can't. At the same time, they've got a frustration at the moment with PSR. And if they did manage to get a lump of cash in for Isak, that would help that situation, albeit they need to replace him. So, it's a classic scenario that they will have modelled previously. I'm sure the executive at Newcastle, the scouting team, are all over what the options will be, but they know they're not in control of it at the moment, and they'll have to be ready to react.
Have you been in situations like this before, Paul? And if so, what happened?
Fortunately not. The nature of my tenure in the Premier League and the squad that we built was that I don't recall any clubs ever coming hunting for our players. But it's all fair in love, war and transfer windows between football clubs. I'm afraid you have to be prepared to react to situations that you haven't planned for.
You mentioned the dreaded words there, PSR, as far as Newcastle fans are concerned. Now, we know that they are effectively the richest club in the world. They have huge sums of money to spend, but they can't spend it. We understand why PSR is there, but do you agree with it? Is it working in its current? Do you agree? Is this just stopping clubs getting to the top table?
So I think those are three different questions.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I don't mind answering all of them. But I think it's a good idea to have a mechanism in to control the spending of clubs. Obviously, the difficulty is what you're trying to do is legislate against rogue owners coming in and bankrupting football clubs. talking specifically in Premier League context. But you can't just impose a rule and a judgment on who qualifies for that governance. So you have to have a level playing field for every club. And yeah, so there's, at the moment we've got a situation with PSR where it's governed by losses over a rolling 3-year period. SCR is being discussed, as we all know, which is a very different tilt, which limits clubs to 80% of revenue, although there might well be an arm wrestle of what defines revenue in that scenario. And then the anchoring to the turnover of the bottom club, which gives you a maximum you can spend, although actually I don't think that would impede too many clubs because of the level of distributions to the lowest club. I think that SCR would be a lot more controversial because I think that would probably maintain the status quo a lot more than PSR does. But ultimately, I think, the Premier League is a very smart organisation. They've evolved this far over the time they've existed, and I'm sure they'll find a way. This might not be the best. It was the first shot at it. So I'm sure it will evolve. But I have great sympathy for clubs with deep pockets and wanting to spend. But I'm doing a lot of work at the moment in Formula One, and there's a similar parallel there with cost caps. So the richest teams can only spend the same as the smallest teams on the grid to develop their cars. And it has led for a lot more even competition across the grid. So I suspect football will adapt and the Premier League will find a way of making it work.
You mentioned the F1. I mean, when we look at NFL as well, they've got the selection of players whereby the worst team can choose first, almost like you're in the playground.
The draft,
yeah. So is there any way that you'd like to see an element of that brought into?
Well, no, the draft.
Is it possible?
The draft is part of the system whereby obviously NFL is a franchise, and that's a very different meritocracy in sport. I don't think I'd ever like to see us lose our promotion relegation base in English football. No, I don't think the draft will ever work here. It's also because of the way the collegiate system fills the spaces in the NFL throughout American college sport. So I don't think that's going to happen here.
Paul, another story in this window that has raised a few eyebrows has been the Morgan Gibbs-White saga. The on-off move to Tottenham Hotspur. Confidential release clauses. Now, is there any such thing? And how difficult is it to prove that confidentiality might well have been broken?
So, rather boringly, before I got involved with football, I was a very corporate guy. So this is sort of my wheelhouse, contractual stuff. You can only have confidentiality between the parties to any contract. So the confidentiality could only be between the player and the club. It couldn't extend to any third party because they're not part of that contract. So an allegation that Tottenham somehow breached a confidentiality clause is a non-starter because they're not party to the contract in the first place. And furthermore, any complaint that Nottingham Forest may have, it would strike me, would have to be with whoever breached the contract, which is either the club or someone on the player's side. So I think it's a bit of a non-story. I think, again, Nottingham Forest had the opportunity to renegotiate the player's contract before this came about, and that would have been the best way of avoiding any problems.
Great stuff. Intriguing stuff. More to come from Paul after the break as we delve into the stories from the transfer market during his time at Hull City. And there's some great stories coming your way. Stay with us. Is still with us. Okay, Paul, time now for you to share some of your experiences, good and bad, during a transfer window. What stands out?
Wow. Transfer windows are quite a unique thing. Our first experience of a Premier League transfer window was particularly difficult because we were having to model for two scenarios. Until the playoff final, we had our scouts looking at basically two players for every position in the Championship or the Premier League. And when you don't start being able to enact that plan until the 24th of May or the 25th of May after a small celebration, it really puts you behind everybody else. So it's tough. Transfer windows to me are really just insane amounts of work. We bought 12 players in that first window 15 before our first Premier League campaign, 12 in the previous season when I joined the club in the Championship. And it's if you think that those 15 roles you fill, you probably have got a strike rate of one of any 2 or 3 targets you're going for. So there's somewhere between 30 and 40 conversations to be had to secure the players you actually bring into the club. So chaos, exhausting, fun at times, but stressful.
You've had a few interesting experiences, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, when I joined the club, obviously, in the first season and the second season, the Premier League season, the first Premier League season, I think because I was a new boy on the block as far as the company chairman was concerned, I did have some very interesting situations. I had threats of physical violence from one agent unless I agreed his fee, which I declined to do, and I'm still here to tell the story, I'm pleased to say. We had one player get disappeared by his agent. So we'd agreed the deal. He had to be signed, needed to get to the club to sign the deal. And again, it turned out he was locked in a farm somewhere, and we had to come to a deal with the agent before he'd allow the player to travel to the club to sign the contract. And then we had another one where we had brought in a French African player who turned up with his agents at the training ground. Everything was going well. Medical had been done, getting to the documentation. And another agent turned up who'd been an agent in France. And they proceeded to fight each other, which was quite interesting whilst we all watched and waited. But it all got sorted out in the end.
What was the best signing you made? It wasn't a player who walloped a free kick at White Hart Lane, was it?
So it's difficult. The best signing, I'm going to have to be pragmatic about that answer. So the best signing is probably Giovanni, because we ended up scoring the record points for a new promoted club, and his 3 goals, the first 3 goals he scored, Fulham, Arsenal and Spurs, were very much part of that. A couple of worldies against Arsenal and Spurs. But then again, Dean Windus was my first signing, and if it hadn't been for Dino, we wouldn't have been in the Premier League, arguably, for him to do that. And I'd have to give a nod to Brownie. Signing the manager is always probably the most significant thing you ever do as a club chairman, and obviously that was a really successful journey.
I love Phil Brown, really good guy. You've spoken about the players you've got through the door, 12 first season, 15 second season. In amongst all of that, there must have been maybe 1 or 2 that got away. Did you sit face to face with a couple of big hitters and nearly get over the line? What was the one that you missed out on that you think?
There were a couple. I mean, sometimes we tried to sign Richard Cresswell, and the medical team decided that he'd recently had an injury, a knee injury, decided that we couldn't sign him, and he went to Stoke City instead and banged in 12 goals and got them automatic promotion. So these things happen. The other slightly curious one was Jamie Cureton. So we had him at the training ground with his agent, about to sign a contract, went for a toilet break. Half an hour later, went to find him, and he'd gone to Norwich and signed for them. So it's never done till it's done.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what? That happens so many times. No matter deadline days, I've been at clubs where players have gone in through the front door and then they've never been announced, and you never know what happened to them.
Yeah.
If you could reflect on your time at Hull City, if you could change one thing, if I could give you that magic wand, change one thing, be it a signing, be it a moment, what would it be, do you think?
I think it'd be rather churlish of me to try and change anything, to be honest. I came into football from corporate life. I'd always wanted to be in football. It was the most incredible experience, and the 3 seasons I spent as chairman of Hull City, just over 100 games, was a journey that I don't think I would want to change any one thing because it would have an impact on something else. And the year of 2008, where we just missed out on automatic, we got to the playoff final, we won the playoff final, got into the Premier League for the first time in the history of the football club. We got to Wembley for the first time in the history of the football club. We had such an amazing start in the Premier League. As I said, we still hold the record for the most points by a newly promoted club, got 20 points after 9 games. And that got us into the tournament, the Barclays Asia Trophy in Beijing. So it was just the most extraordinary journey. So I would have to say I wouldn't change a thing.
Okay, just give us an insight, because you're obviously an executive chair, so chair and chief executive of a Premier League football club. During a transfer window, what would you say represented the biggest challenge during a window for you?
So managing all of the opportunities. Obviously, I was the business end of that transaction, not the guy identifying targets. We had a really good scouting network. The staff, Brownie and Brian Horton, Steve Parkin, they were very much the people making the decisions on players alongside Bob Shaw, the head scout, and his team. But I think it was the frustration of, a bit like we referenced with Newcastle just now, the lack of control, the fact that you were reacting the whole time. And on that, I'm going to say one last thing actually about transfers. It was really lovely. I saw that obviously Josh Windus joined Wrexham, the Wrexham project, a couple of weeks ago. And Dino was my first signing. And it's nice because at Wrexham, he's got Steve Parkin, who was first team coach at Hull City, and Phil Parkinson, who was the manager at Hull before Phil. So it's a really nice, sometimes things are very circular, and